Hey guys, it's Sam. Today we're going to take a look at scleral contact lenses. So a lot of people kind of shy away from scleral lenses because, they're the different contact lens, right? They're super large, they're a rigid material, so they're just kind of almost scary or foreign. So people are kind of timid when it comes to studying scleral lenses or working with scleral lenses. But the reality is a lot of times they're actually easier to work with than a corneal RGP. It's just understanding, what's the applicability of using scleral lenses, like when would you use them, who would benefit from them. So we're going to kind of talk about those things so you just have a brief overview knowledge of scleral lenses so you'll be confident if you come across a question on your Ncle examination that you'll be able to pass it and understand the material a little bit so you can speak intelligently, so you can succeed in your insertion and removal of scleral lenses, those types of things, those surface level things that'll hopefully evoke a desire to study a little bit deeper as you get more and more into the contact lens profession. So I'm Sam. I really appreciate when you subscribe to the channel, when you share the channel, but just keep watching the videos. If you're studying, just be diligent and just even just learning through osmosis and just kind of passively listening to the information, you'll be leaps and bounds ahead rather than spending your time on some other task that's not kind of growing towards your goal of passing the contact lens exam and becoming a better contact lens technician. So to get started, what are scleral contact lenses? Scleral contact lenses, simply put, these are contact lenses that land on the sclera, right? So they completely vault the cornea, go over the cornea, and they land on the bulbar conjunctiva, which is the membrane that covers the anterior of the sclera. So I just want to, I'll show a little diagram here to help that illustrate that point. So we know the horizontal visible iris diameter. The average cornea is, 11.8 millimeters horizontally. We could say 12 millimeters. So with soft contact lenses, just to put this in perspective, soft contact lenses, we generally want them about 2 millimeter larger diameter than our HVID because that's going to allow for a 1 millimeter drape around, over the cornea. So they're going to bridge the limbus, and they actually, a soft lens like, Acuvue Oasis or something like that, is going to land just right beyond the limbus. It's going to land 1 millimeter because the radius will be half that, extra 2 millimeter diameter. So you'll have 1 millimeter around. That's why your typical soft lens has a 14.0, 14.2 diameter, something along those lines. So if this is your cornea, this would be like a soft contact lens. So scleral lenses, we know they're going to land beyond that zone. They're going to completely, bypass the limbal area, the corneoscleral limbus, and they're going to land on the anterior, the anterior of the sclera. The bulbar conjunctiva is that membrane that covers the front of the sclera. The conjunctiva covers the inside of the eyelids, right? We have our palpebral conjunctiva. Pardon me, getting over some laryngitis here. So a scleral lens is going to rest beyond that. And they're typically going to be at least, 15 millimeters in diameter, ranging up to 24 millimeters, on occasion as high as 26 millimeters. The typical mini scleral lens is going to be from 15 to 18 millimeters, and your full-size scleral lens is going to be more like the 18.1 up to the 24 millimeters. And the purpose for a scleral lens, there's many different reasons to use one, but primarily it is going to be to completely, vault the cornea, and it's going to create a brand new optical surface for the eye. So, this is hyperbole, it's an over-exaggeration. It's a new word for you, potentially. So I'm just going to, if someone's cornea is like completely jacked up, let's just say they've had trauma, there's some ectasia and thinning, and so let's say that's a side profile of someone's cornea. A cylindrical lens is not going to correct that, right? So your bitoric gas permeable lens is not going to correct a irregular cornea like that. So you vault the cornea. The landing zone on the scleral lens is called the haptic zone. So just remember that. So the haptic zone, where it lands on the sclera, is going to completely, really just seal off that lens to the anterior, the front of the eye. And this is going to fill in with preservative-free saline. We'll talk about that. And it's going to create a brand new ocular surface. So it's like not regarding the ugly cornea that's underneath it, for lack of a better word. It's just creating a brand new surface. It's allowing the those pseudo fake tears to come in behind it, and it allows the light, you know, to bend properly and kind of replaces that surface. Scleral lenses are not only used for irregular corneas like that, you know, which we would classify like keratoconus is your most common type of, when you talk about irregular astigmatism, everyone always cites keratoconus. That's a thinning and a protrusion of the central cornea. You could have pellucid marginal degeneration. That's a thinning of the lower region of the cornea. So you might have a cone shape that's inferior on the cornea. You could have an accident, someone get a stick in their eye, and it could just kind of change the geography of the cornea, and where you're not going to get a smooth surface, where it's going to have a perpendicular different astigmatism type, where it's regular astigmatism. So you're going to need to create a brand new surface. There are a whole host, bullous keratopathy, just different things that would warrant the use of a scleral lens from a medical side. But there's also many applications for people who are active with sports. It's just a very stable lens. It provides great optics. So now that we have very high decay oxygen permeable lenses, people are using them just for their clarity and their comfort, believe it or not. So we can use them for dry eyes is another common reason people use scleral lenses, because again, we're creating a brand new moist environment for the cornea. So if you have a disorder where you're not producing enough tears, or the quality of your tears are not good, then you could use a scleral lens, and it will kind of force the cornea to be in a moist environment, because you're creating a seal where you can put the preservative-free saline in there. I keep saying preservative-free because that's so important with scleral lenses. Contact lenses, they're used, since the late 1800s, and they use glass lenses. And these were scleral lenses. They weren't corneal lenses. They weren't small diameter. And they used to have to fenestrate them. Fenestration is where you drill little holes in the periphery of the lens to allow for oxygen and tear exchange and things like that. But it compromised the quality of the lens. And then, in the 1930s up to like the 80s, polymethyl methacrylate was a really popular lens material, but still, had to fenestrate the lens. Just putting these holes in the lens for that tear exchange. But what would happen is, that would allow for air bubbles, and you would get dry spots on the cornea. You'd have a lot of issues with edema and swelling. So it wasn't the best time for contact lens wear. Of course, soft lenses started to emerge in the 70s or so. And then, with the 80s, we saw really a high emergence of corneal lenses, which are, smaller diameter lenses. Right, so if we said the horizontal visible iris diameter, or really the cornea's circumference, but the width across about 12 millimeters. So corneal gas permeable lenses were a healthier option because they rest completely on the cornea. Right, so the cornea itself could get more nutrition. We know the cornea receives its nutrition through oxygen in the environment, through the tear film, through vessels that end at the limbus. They kind of loop at the limbus, through detergescence of the endothelial layer of the cornea. If these are foreign terms to you, you may review some earlier videos that we've done. So gas permeable lenses were very popular, but then in modern times now, we have all these materials that have excellent decay and oxygen transmissibility, right? So we went back to scleral lenses as a popular type of lens. These 15 millimeter and beyond lenses, because they allow for the permeation of oxygen, so it's a healthier lens for the eye. So the fitting of scleral lenses has kind of resurged. Every magazine that deals with the trade of contact lenses, you'll always find scleral lens articles in it now because there's just so many applications for it. One of the best things with scleral lenses are their comfort, because the scleral lens, and this will probably be a question on your test, scleral lens, because they're so large, they don't interact with the eyelids, right? They rest under the eyelids, so you don't have that lid irritation. One of the hardest things to get used to with a corneal gas permeable lens is the lid interaction. But we don't have that with scleral lenses. So scleral contact lenses are as comfortable, or even sometimes more comfortable, than soft contact lenses, which are so incredibly popular because they're so easy to fit and there's no adaptation time. But I digress, or minimal adaptation time. So scleral lenses, some people are going to be really concerned about them because they look at this ginormous lens and they're just like, this is going on my eye. That's the mentality behind it. But in reality, they're super comfortable. They're very oxygen, permeable. So they're a great option for a lot of patients that, if they have irregular corneas, or if they just want a great lens with great optical qualities, scleral lenses are a great way to go. So some things we want to talk about, because they vault the cornea, there's no, mechanical interaction between the lens and the cornea. So you're going to minimize things like the lens bearing on the cornea or dry spots on the cornea. So that's a really, big benefit to fitting scleral lenses. A side note, there are different methodologies for fitting sclerals, and sometimes you do want a touch fit on them. But, when we talk about traditional fitting of scleral contact lenses, you want to know that they vault the cornea and you're not going to have that interaction. I talked about preservative-free saline. I want to talk about that just for a minute here. So with the contact lens, the scleral lens, let's draw it. Not bad. So when you're inserting the scleral contact lens, the most common method is you're going to use your your 2 fingers and your thumb like that, and you're going to set the lens on them like a bowl. But you're going to fill it with preservative-free saline or preservative-free artificial tears. Normal contact lens solutions are not designed for scleral lenses because they have preservatives in them. And what happens is those preservatives, because this is a very important concept, that saline that you're putting in the lens bowl, that's going to be on your cornea the whole time. It may not exchange whatsoever with your tear film. So until you remove that lens, you're going to have that same preservative bowl on your eye. And the preservatives, if you were to put them in the scleral lens, they're not designed to be on your eye as long as all day wear. They're meant to, be washed away in your tear film and things like that. But with a scleral lens, if you put preservative saline in your eye, it's going to sit on your cornea and it's actually going to cause potentially a chemical burn and different issues related to using preservatives. All that to say, never use any type of preservative saline or preservative contact lens solution in the bowl of a scleral lens. Always has to be preservative free. But what you're going to do is you're going to fill that contact lens up all the way. And if you remember from a chemistry class, if you ever learned about a meniscus, that's that, like at the top of a water glass, that layer that actually will extend over the top. That's called a meniscus, so you can see it like rising above. So you actually want like a meniscus in that bowl, so it's overfilled, right? When you insert these lenses, you want to feel the preservative-free saline just like almost gush out, just the excess of it, because you want it overfilled. You don't want any oxygen, any air getting in and creating bubbles in that lens. You want a perfect seal. So you're going to instruct the patient to fill it with a solution, preservative-free. They're actually going to tuck their chin in, tuck their chin into their chest. Probably have a mirror right in front of them so they can see what they're doing. And they're going to just insert it, holding their lid open like they would with another lens. Insert it right on the eye, and it's actually going to create a very tight suction on their eye. They also may use a plunger for insertion. They have special GP lens insertion devices, and they're actually very helpful. With scleral lenses, you'll definitely want to use them for removal. You may use them for insertion. But yeah, with the scleral lens, you're going to fill it with preservative-free saline solution. You're going to insert it right on the eye. You're going to check your vision to make sure there's no bubbles in it. If it has bubbles in the lens, or you could visibly see them, or a disruption in the vision, you just want to take the lens out and reinsert it, making sure you have enough saline in the bowl of the contact lens. Removal of the lens. Removal of the lens, you're going to want to use that DMV, that plunger device. You're going to position it. And guys, I know this is a lot of information, but I also know that you can watch the video multiple times and focus on just scleral lenses, and it'll be helpful. So you're gonna place the plunger, we'll draw a plunger or something like that, at that 6 o'clock position, right? So we envision a clock, 12, 3, 6. You're going to lift it. The edge of the lens up and away from the eye should break that negative pressure seal. If it doesn't work, the instruction is to try it over here at the 9 o'clock, then try it at the 12 o'clock, and so on until you break that seal. It's very important that you don't use the plunger on the center of the lens, that you're always using it at the periphery, but textbook says to use it 6 o'clock, and you're going to work your way clockwise until that lens wants to remove. People who are highly skilled, or their eyes are just really built upon this, can use like a scissor method for removing it without a plunger, but that's not very common. So insertion, you're going to use like a 3-finger method. Tuck your chin in, fill the bowl with preservative-free saline, insert it right on the cornea. Removal, you're going to definitely almost definitely want to use a plunger. Start at the 6 o'clock periphery, and just work your way around if you're not able to lift the edge of that lens off and break that negative pressure seal. Some things to watch for a scleral contact lens fit is you could have conjunctival impingement or blanching. That's just where it's too tight around the edge in the haptic zone of the sclera, and you could see where your sclera will actually turn like a really bright white, like a white ring around it, where it's just too tight on that zone. And a lot of times you can actually have scleral billowing, which is a fun word to say. So scleral. And that's like if the scleral lens is, again, just too tight on the sclera, it could actually make the sclera look puffy around the edge, where you can see it kind of billow like a cloud, and it usually resolves after removing the lens, and that may or may not indicate a refit on the contact lenses. To fit scleral lenses, what you want to know when fitting scleral lenses is you're primarily fitting them based on the vault. So this isn't like lenses that interact with the cornea. So these are completely vaulting the cornea. They're landing on the sclera, right? Or more precisely on the bulbar conjunctiva, which coats the anterior of the sclera. So really, you're looking at a couple different things primarily, because every scleral lens manufacturer has a different philosophy behind fitting their lenses based on reverse geometry and different metrics that they develop, or different fitting strategy that they propose for their specific lenses. So there's just some basic things you want to look out for. The scleral vault, which is like the sagittal depth of the lens. And just for a review, when we talk about the sagittal depth, what we're talking about, the distance from the central posterior of the lens to a flat surface. So when we're talking about scleral lenses, we're talking about the sagittal vault. We're talking about the distance from the posterior surface of the contact lens, the side that's closest to the cornea, the distance from that to the anterior or front of the cornea. So So that's really your primary fitting measurement, is that sagittal depth, that vault of the lens. And you're looking at a couple things. So you actually want to see a side profile of the patient's eye. And you could see, if you have them turn to the side, and you could look at their eye, and you could see the cornea, you could see the shape of the cornea. It's something that you just become more and more attuned to. So you could have a deep cornea, right? Or you could have an average cornea, or you can have a shallow cornea. It's usually going to be based on, one of 3 different classifications. So a deep cornea, this is kind of deep relationship. We'll exaggerate this. So you might say that's prolate, kind of like really steep looking. Or you can have an average cornea, or you can have a really, a flat or a shallow or more oblate cornea, right? So it's just flatter. So you're gonna gauge the person's cornea just by looking at it. You may use slit lamp, and you may just view the side profile. And then you'll have a fitting set, a diagnostic set, and you're gonna divide it into, what are my prolate, sagittal depths here? What are my shallow ones? What are my average ones? And you're gonna take that, you're gonna base that also on the patient's horizontal visible iris diameter. Right, so if it's really a short diameter, if it's small, you're gonna say that's less than 11 millimeters, because we said the average is 12, right? So average might be 11 to 12.5 millimeters, and then you might have a large horizontal visible iris diameter, might be greater than 12.5 millimeters. So you're gonna take your diameter measurement, you're gonna take your whether their cornea appears really steep or flat or average, and you're gonna take that with your fitting set, and you're gonna talk to the contact lens technician, and you're gonna give them your measurements. You'll probably have a corneal topography. I do want to mention on the corneal topography that the red on the topography represents the really steep areas of the cornea. So those warm colors are steep. Then you have the cool colors, which are your green and your blue. Those are the flatter areas of the cornea. But you may, now the commonplace is to send them a topography, to give them your measurements, your HVID, and things like that. And they're going to work with you on your fitting set. So what you want to do is you'll fit the patient with a lens from your office, fill it with the preservative-free saline. You can put fluorescein inside the bowl of the lens, evaluate it on the patient's eye. If we're using fluorescein, almost always can use a cobalt filter, a yellow Ratten filter, and you're going to see, is it bearing on the cornea anywhere? Is it too steep on the cornea? You're going to observe that relationship. And once you're pleased with the fit of the lens, then your next step would be to do an over refraction, and that's when you're going to fine tune the power. So remember, you're creating a brand new cornea for this patient, right? So, but it might be too strong or it might be too weak. Just because you have a new, smooth surface doesn't mean it's giving the patient the right power. So that's why you're going to over refract them, adjust the power, keep all the other measurements the same, and you're going to order in your new lens so that the patient can see well. I hope this video has been helpful. If it has, like it. Please comment, send me suggestions. Again, my voice is a little hoarse today, so I apologize for that. But if it has been beneficial, please share it. And really just invest in your own studies, in your own career by learning the material, taking it, growing, getting certified. I just think it would be so cool if more people were knowledgeable in the field of opticianry and knowledgeable in the field of contact lenses, and we just as a group could just grow the profession through education. So just keep learning. I'll keep putting up videos, and I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time.